representing Franchise Secrets, Erik Von Horn.
If you're not a part of the Franchise Secrets Facebook group, what are you waiting for? It's franchisesecrets.com/Facebook. I cannot believe how valuable this group turned out to be. When someone asks a question, the feedback is honest, authentic, very helpful, and it's from multiple perspectives. If you're not sure that you're getting the most accurate information about franchising, then check out the largest, most helpful Facebook group in all of franchising. Whether you're a Z, a Zor, a buyer, or investor, join our free Facebook group at franchisesecrets.com/Facebook. Hey, on today's episode, we had the wolf of franchising. He will remain nameless, but we talked about all kinds of things. He got his start in franchise development and then got an amazing online presence with tens of thousands of people in his audience. So we get into things like writing a newsletter, why that even matters. We talk about Twitter versus SEO, how to quickly grow an audience, things that you've learned in franchise development, and why partner with people that are doing that are a lot smarter, that have done things way beyond you. Like, why partner with that? He started to talk about how he didn't even want to pay money, a couple grand for a website, and yet ended up having a partnership with a very well-known, successful entrepreneur. So it was a really, really fun show with the Wolf of Franchising. We were live face-to-face, but you're going to see in this show, his face is covered up because he wants to remain anonymous. Enjoy the show. All right, today we have the Wolf of Franchising, not to be confused with the Wolf of Wall Street, and not to be confused with his real name with, no, I'm not going to say it. I'm not going to say it. I just wanted to give you a little scare. So man, welcome to the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Erik.
Yeah. So I've seen you for a while. We've had multiple conversations. I've been on your thing. And so I've been looking forward to having you on here. Most people really don't know who you are, do they?
No, I've kept somewhat of an anonymous identity since the start, and it's gotten bigger than I ever thought it would be. So yeah, here we are today.
So if someone does have a lot of money, they want to pay me a lot of money, I can absolutely reveal his identity, but it'll take a good chunk of change for that. But we got our teeth cut in the same place in franchise development back in the day. So why don't we start there? Because we can't talk too much about like who you are. Tell us who you are as much as you can tell us who you are. And then let's dive into like where you got started in franchise development.
Yeah, sure. So I started at a fran dev firm based out of Manhattan, and I worked there for about 3 years. Left recently, which I can get more into. But overall, right, we were focusing on early stage franchise brands, and it was a small team. So learned a lot. Worked under a very experienced senior director of development who had worked with big brands from Mathnasium to Sky Zone and a few others. Soaked it all in, worked my way up pretty quickly to director of development. And through that, gave me a ton of exposure, and really just working at this development firm, right? Where we weren't industry specific the way like maybe a FranSmart is. We worked with brands from any industry, and, got a ton of exposure to evaluating early stage franchise brands, and then B, with just through the outreach and also the inbound leads we got, spoke to dozens and dozens of multi-unit owners that were considering one of our brands, and just really exposed me to the whole world of franchises. And I think franchise development, especially like a fran dev firm specifically, versus just working at one brand, I think it's such a great introduction to the industry because you see it from all angles. And yeah, I just remember the first time I heard about multi-unit ownership, I think it was my boss talking about one of his former franchisee clients, and I was just like, wait, what? You can just buy a bunch of franchises and make a ton of money? I was like, why hasn't anyone ever talked about this? So yeah, it's been a fun ride since.
So that kind of dovetails into what you're doing now. You're talking about franchising in a really big way. Like you have I would say you have one of the largest audiences out there So who would you say your audience is, and how large is it, and what do you do, and how are you helping them?
Yeah. So, I mean, I got like close to 50,000 on Twitter now, 25,000 newsletter subscribers to the Wolf Report. And we also just launched, my website. Like, it's going to be a blog where all the content will live at wolfoffranchises.com. But I'd say my audience is primarily targeted at prospective buyers, whether they're someone who has never owned a franchise before, or maybe they already own brands, but they're, on the hunt for more to add to their portfolio. Just from my work in FranDev, there were kind of two things I realized. It's one, that franchising can be a great path to wealth creation if you do it the right way. There's definitely a lot of risk involved at times, and it's not something that should be taken lightly given the investment levels. But, I saw time after time multi-unit owners who were doing very well for themselves, and they just, are continuing to expand. So I thought, especially when it comes to Twitter, right, there's a lot of people talking their books. They're talking about entrepreneurship, tech startups, whatever it is, but no one was talking about franchises. So I just thought it deserves a seat at the table if you're an entrepreneurial type. So that was part of the inspiration. But then secondly, I felt there's a bit of a lack of transparency at times in the franchise world where, buyers would get on the phone with me frustrated because they just want to get some level of basic understanding of the financials, but it's really hard to find online. And as I thought about it more, I was just like, obviously from a legal perspective, we know it's public facing information, right? You can find the FDDs on state websites if you're in the industry, but most, your newbie coming into franchising is never going to have a shot at finding that and even understanding how to navigate the document. So I just thought if we could bring some more of that forward, hopefully it weeds out some of the, maybe people not being as forthcoming within the franchise world, but also the better brands hopefully can rise to the top because they're being transparent and we're bringing the higher performing brands in front of more people. So that was the inspiration for this whole Wolf of Franchises.
So definitely check out the Wolf of Franchises website. Get onto the newsletter for sure. There's it's well written. There's really good information in there. And I always open it up. I get a million emails. I'm always checking out what the Wolf is saying. So we all know Jordan. That. Yeah, 100%. We all know Jordan, the Wolf of Wall Street. So like, where did the Wolf of Franchising originate?
Yeah, I've seen the movie Wolf of Wall Street, of course, and thought it was hilarious, and not in a real life setting. There are things that maybe would not be funny and are actually probably pretty bad from a company culture standpoint, but whatever. It's a good Hollywood flick. But when I was making the account, this is back in March 2021, because originally it started as a blog, and then quickly I realized how hard SEO is. So I transitioned to Twitter and a newsletter for more, direct feedback and, to kind of create a success flywheel. But, that was close to the time of the Wall Street Bet saga. And I just thought between the vibes on Wall Street and, for the franchising industry, which can be a little dull, I thought maybe this could be like a fun take on it. It's not actually intended to be, I'm not aspiring to be anything like the Wolf of Wall Street. Let's just make that clear. But it's just meant to be a fun take on the whole industry. And honestly, part of the inspiration too, which I don't know if you've ever experienced this, but some of the multi-unit owners I've talked to, and most of them are very nice people. But I've noticed some, the ones who own a lot, they give me Wall Street vibes where they're sitting back, and I remember getting on the phone with them, and there's one Little Caesars franchisee in particular who owned like 20 and a few international licenses as well. And I remember him basically saying, he's like, I got 20 Little Caesars under my belt, so what can your brand do for me? And just stopped right there. Like, what? Like, but yeah, so it's just a fun brand. That's all.
Dude, I love that. I love that story. I have some voicemails saved from 19 years ago that I got left. I'm like, this is the craziest voicemail I've ever had. And I saved it, and I still have it on my computer from like 19 years ago. It's hilarious, but you deal with all kinds of people when you're helping people look at franchisors, or you selling franchise, whatever you want to say. Some people are thinking you are a shark, you're the wolf, and other people are just so grateful that you might have an opportunity from them. You get to hear it from everybody in franchise development.
Yeah, I mean, the sales cycles are so long, and you're right, man. The variations of personalities you get, I mean, if you're someone who's looking to get sales experience, franchise sales you'll cut your teeth pretty quick. So
I might have to dig out this is what we need to do, man. I'm going to have Caleb dig out that voicemail. I'm going to have him transcribe it with a bunch of funny things that he does and put it on YouTube. And I bet there'll be a lot of franchise development people that can relate to that. So, hey, let's go back to, you had a blog and you were playing the SEO long game and thought, man, there's a better way to do this. And in other words, there's a better way to grow an audience. And so if you don't think this is applicable to you out there listening, whether you're a Z or a Zor, this is absolutely important for you to listen to, where it may not seem like you're not going to be on Twitter. You're not going, that's not the point. The point is, how do you grow an audience and how do you start to create that personal brand? So talk about that journey from SEO to Twitter to that flywheel.
Yeah. So, I mean, just the nature of ranking on Google it's a significant time investment, even if you're an expert at SEO. And, we can get into this maybe later, but, now that I'm partnered with this company, Workweek, who, they're full of people who have tons of experience in media, in building newsletters, building social followings, and also SEO. I have access to some very high level people compared to what I knew, where, I watched a bunch of YouTube videos about SEO and read some blogs on how to, do it somewhat right. But ultimately, even if you're the world's best SEO expert and you're starting in an industry with established domains, you're fighting time and you're fighting years of backlink building and just other factors that Google takes in to determine what should be the top search results for any given Google search. And, I was like 5 or 6 blogs in, and it just sort of hit me, because I'm tracking the metrics on the back end of WordPress, and zero readers. Zero readers. I think I got one from like Australia one time, and I was like, oh, hell yeah, I got a reader. But I mean, I was like, okay, this is going to be a slog, and am I even doing this right? And honestly, the website was pretty garbage. Like, I designed it myself, didn't really feel like spending the money, $2,000 to $5,000, even for like a low budget website designer. So I was already on Twitter too, not with the Wolf account or anything, just, like a dummy account. I wasn't posting anything. I was just reading, because there's a lot of good stuff. So whether you're going to be on there for franchise stuff or not, there's a lot of good knowledge being dropped on Twitter from people from all walks of life and all different forms of entrepreneurs and, just professional careers. So, I'm a curious person, so I loved just being on there and reading, different things. But I did see a trend developing where people were tweeting, people were building a following for being very niche in a topic. That's the best way, in my opinion, to grow a following is, go niche on something. People will resonate with that, and you'll become known for that specific niche. And then as you get bigger, you can expand to other topics. But if you're broad, it's really hard to stand out. So I noticed people picking the niches, growing their followings, and writing a newsletter. And there's a very kind of clear way on Twitter specifically where you can gain newsletter subscribers from your tweets. And so that's what I ended up pivoting to in like the summer of 2021.
So did you learn that Twitter hack by a blog, or is that some other people that taught you that were?
No, it was, so, I mean, I got into Twitter, and this is, maybe a bit of a tangent, but back in like January 2017, because of cryptocurrency, believe it or not. And there was a lot, even today, there's a lot more media and like coverage of crypto than back then. But back then in 2017, early 2017, if you wanted knowledge on anything Bitcoin or Ethereum or crypto related, Twitter was like the only spot where I felt like I was getting legitimate, valid information from professionals who weren't snake oil salesmen. So that's how I started on there. And then that expanded into like tech and investing and all these different people on Twitter who are, really seriously sharing like incredible wisdom, incredible nuggets of knowledge that you probably have to pay for elsewhere. And, I'm talking, there's a reason Elon Musk is on Twitter, because every like big CEO, hedge fund manager, et cetera, they're on Twitter dropping information. And it's just fun to learn about. So just from being on there, I just noticed it. My favorite writer on tech startups, grew to 100,000 followers really quickly. And all of a sudden his newsletter was blowing up. So I just kind of realized, like, okay, like there's no one talking about franchises. Let me try this. And so far, it's worked.
So I love that. So why should a franchisee pay attention to Twitter, or should they? As a franchisee, small business owner, why should they pay attention to Twitter? And I have the same question for franchisors and franchise buyers.
Yeah, I mean, so definitely, I think all should be on Twitter, in my opinion. To me, this might be I'm from the younger generation, but I think Twitter's like what LinkedIn aspires to be, but it's not. Meaning you don't have to, there's no HR presence in the way that I feel like LinkedIn, and like there's a heavy recruiter and HR presence on LinkedIn, and Twitter's just people speaking their mind. There's no one watching over their shoulder. They kind of speak freely like a human. It's not this corporate buttoned up talk. So it's just, for me, it's a better vibe. But again, there's so many different entrepreneurs sharing their journeys, which is why I love it. And that's what it is. It's just authentic sharing of people's journeys. And yes, of course, it's the internet. There's some nasty pockets of Twitter and internet fights that happen like anywhere, like in YouTube comments or what have you. But for the most part, right, you can curate who you want to follow and what's in your feed, and you can keep it pretty positive. So yeah, as far as franchise owners in particular too, I mean, it's small, but because my account's been able to get bigger, I have become a bit of a magnet for the franchisees and people interested in that world on Twitter. So, and I've met a bunch of franchise owners and they've been on my podcast. So it's not super large. LinkedIn's probably a lot larger of an audience for franchisees and in generally the franchise industry. But there's a community there and we're building it. And there's also a lot of small business. There's a lot of small business owners who, they own their own independent businesses, but maybe they consider franchises every now and then.
So
but
with
yeah,
that, I like that you said that, because if there's small businesses on there, there should be a franchise presence. So as a franchisee, if I'm in a certain industry, whatever the industry is, I would get on Twitter and start to find some other people that are maybe influencers or very knowledgeable in that space or run large companies. And you can just start to learn and become better at your own industry. At the very least, do something like that. What do you think?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, if you're a curious person, if you're looking to learn things and even just meet other people, it's really fun and it's cool to meet these people who, last week I met someone who's running their own self-storage company, which is something, I don't know, I wasn't really thinking about, but there's a whole segment of Twitter that it's a bunch of, men and women who are running their own self-storage businesses. And then there's the same thing for home services. And I also met someone who's, what is he? He owns a chain of coffee shops in the San Antonio area, and he's thinking of franchising them in a few years. So it's a lot of cool stuff. And like, who knows? It doesn't even have to be about financial or personal gain, right? Like, I don't know if anything's going to come from half these things, but it's just fun to meet these people. And, one of them was visiting Manhattan where I'm based and, DM'd me on Twitter, was like, hey, you want to grab a beer? And I was like, yeah, definitely. I'd love to meet you in real life. So just cool stuff like that.
I love it.
Yeah.
Okay. What are you really good at? You've got this newsletter. That's fantastic, but I can't imagine, maybe you're an amazing copywriter that just spends the majority of your time writing copy, or there's maybe it started out that way. And then as it grew, there's a team of copywriters where you are now. So give me a sense of how that works, because I think a lot of people they underestimate how difficult it is to write good copy, good long form content, newsletters, and they are not doing a very good job in their own franchise brands as a result of not giving that enough credit. So, like, give us some insight into that.
Yeah. I mean, I'd say my copywriting has definitely improved, especially when I look back to we're pretty much at a year ago today. It's pretty close to the day from when I started the Twitter account. I look back at like the way I used to tweet, and just sort of my social media understanding has really evolved in the last year. But I'd say, I guess, first it's platform specific, meaning the way you write on Twitter is not necessarily the way you write on LinkedIn, which is also not the way you write in your newsletter. You want to cater it to the platform and to the medium. So I've learned that, and newsletters can obviously be longer form. And whereas Twitter, it's more about short form, like short sentences, right? There's character limits on there for a reason. And then there's this whole thing, which maybe this is too much, but there's threads, which are basically a series of tweets that you can post at once. And that's a big way to help grow your following. You can use that feature to tell stories or do breakdowns on businesses or, whatever you want to talk about. So yeah, I mean, I think the most important part for copywriting and anything that you're selling, right, whether it's a product, service, a franchise, right, is not saying what your franchise, like not talking about the features of it, but explaining and concisely communicating to your ideal customer what it can do for them. Yeah. There's this classic thing on Twitter that I see reposted, because there's a big major marketing community on Twitter. There's a classic ad that Apple ran, and it has the iPod, and it's the first version of the ad that didn't perform well was like, the world's first, MP3 player in your pocket. And that has an X through it because guess what? Nobody cares, Apple, that you invented the first MP3 player. But the one that converts is the one that has the copy 1,000 songs in your pocket. And it's like, damn, okay, because now you're telling your customer exactly what this product does for them. And now everyone wants to buy it. So I try to keep that in mind too, just generally when I'm thinking of trying to post something for newsletter conversion or whatever the case is. But I think that's just general philosophy, is just say what your product or service or business can do for your customer. Not necessarily, don't focus on the awards you've won or whatever.
Yep. So many brands do this wrong. Franchisees, franchisors do this wrong. And because it's easy just to post about your features, and people care about themselves. And I just finished recording a testimonial video for somebody that I paid money to be a part of their group. And he asked for a testimonial, and I did. And one of the questions were, what results did you get? So it wasn't like, what did we do for you? But it's like, what results did you get? Because people care about the results that they get, not all the things that you can do for them.
Absolutely. Yeah. And even just that person asking you for testimonial too, that's like a very good way, right? Social proofs is super powerful when used correctly. So
let's talk about that. Let's go down that rabbit hole, because I don't do a good enough job of social proof. We're getting ready to do more. I don't think most franchisors or franchisees do a good job with social proof, whether it's from their customers or their franchisees trying to get more franchisees. So talk about social proof.
Yeah. I mean, it's really just embedding, right, validation in the mind of like prospects. So, in the context of franchises, if you've sold a bunch of units, there's a way to communicate that, because that shows a lot of buy-in, that people have actually taken the plunge from, being on the outside to investing however much money it costs to start up your franchise. And now they're actually owning and operating the brand. And who knows, maybe you have some really impressive franchisees. Back when I was in development, we had a few pretty sophisticated and pretty large multi-unit owners buy our franchises. And to me, that was amazing validation, because it's like these people were successful, like very successful with another brand. And it's a brand that has a ton of credibility. You would think, right? And, people get things wrong, but you'd think the owners of one major brand, they're not dummies. So if they're putting their money somewhere else, right, that means something. So yeah, I mean, there's just ways to leverage that. And I really think it's a way to sell without coming off as selling, right? And I always try to maximize those abilities, because nobody likes feeling sold to. Like you hate it, right? I mean, it's brutal walking. I was in a mall 2 weeks ago, which I haven't been to a mall in years, but that's another story. But just walking by certain booths, and I could see the people looking at me, and I knew, the sunglass huts, they're gonna come up to me and ask me if I want, and I didn't even want to walk by it, because it's uncomfortable. But anyway, so yeah, that's why I love social proofs, because it's such a powerful way to sell your product without having to make someone feel like they're being sold to.
There's so many little things like that. There's so many different reasons why social proof matters and the benefits of it. And so if I'm you, a franchisee or a franchisor, dive down that rabbit hole for a little bit. start asking for testimonial videos from your franchisees and your franchisors. Ask them the right questions, because the right questions will elicit the right response that you want. If you don't ask somebody, what did you like about my program or about our services? You ask them about the results. How did this make you feel? How did this, so it's those, you have to ask the right questions, but I think it's worth some time going down that rabbit hole if I'm you. So let's talk. You said something earlier that you're too cheap. I'm putting words in your mouth. You're too cheap to pay for a website. And whether it was $1,000 or $100,000 for a website, doesn't matter. You're too cheap to pay for a website. But now that's like a small little price to pay for, like, you're giving up a lot with probably different partnerships, different arrangements, different agreements and whatnot. So what changed between looking at things like, I'm just going to have 100% of this one thing, or do all this by myself, or bootstrap everything, to let me partner with some amazing people? And so what changed?
Yeah. So I think back to March 2021, when I, wasn't willing to shell out the couple hundred or a couple thousand for a website, was, I had a bunch of side hustles. I'm a pretty entrepreneurial person, always been into it. And that's why I really resonated with the franchise development job, because I believe in, there's a philosophical debate whether our franchisees really entrepreneurs, because it's, they're technically not building their own brand, they're just buying it. But I think unequivocally yes. Anyway, so I love that job, because I just got to meet and work with so many entrepreneurs, and we were also helping build brands, right, via franchise development. So, but yeah, I mean, I didn't realize the power of what having an audience, or I didn't realize the power of building an audience at that time, which if I knew how high the upside was, I would have easily paid it. But given my side hustle history, where, you never know if an idea is going to work out. And back then, I wasn't necessarily in the financial position I am today. So, that couple grand, maybe felt like a bit more of a hit to my bank account than it would today. But yeah, I think looking at what the Wolf is now, and you kind of reference the partnership I have with Workweek, where there is they're, in exchange for them helping me grow specifically, they're putting a lot of resources into the newsletter, and they've also been a big part of the redesign of the Wolf of Franchises website. I just saw there's so much more beyond traditional media that can come with building an audience and building a following. And, we call it at Workweek, like, owning your own distribution, right? Rather than having to rely on other partners or other media outlets to, promote your brand and your work. If you own the distribution, right, you not only control the narrative, but at any moment, it doesn't cost you incremental dollars to say, if you do develop a product or a business that now all of a sudden you want to start building, it doesn't cost you any incremental dollars to promote it and market it to customers. So, like, when I think of the Wolf, right, 50,000 Twitter followers and growing every day, a newsletter at 24,000 subscribers, growing about 5% per week. If we do come out with a product or service at some point in the future, right, I mean, it's not going to cost me a cent to now promote that to the newsletter or to my Twitter followers, and so on. So I just think owning your distribution as much as possible is a great strategy. And I do think maybe it's a little tougher for individual franchises to do that, but for dev firms, it should be a focus for sure, because you have a portfolio of brands. And I just think it's a really powerful strategy, and it's profitable too. It just takes time to build up, is the reality.
Well, it's very valuable. It's profitable, but it's very valuable. I've been able to acquire equity in companies without spending anything, because of my audience, because of the people that follow me. I don't have, we have different types of audiences. You and I have a different type of audience, but there's a lot of crossover, and you've built an amazing. The size is amazing of that, but there's so much value in the audience. I think that's what. And it takes a while to build. There's short ways to do it. There's things that take longer, but you build an audience, whether it's in your industry. I see franchisors starting to do this. They're starting to have podcasts that are kind of industry related or whatnot. And I think it's really, really smart, because if you become a leader in your industry, you get you'll have people that really want to reach out to you, and it's very valuable.
Yeah, that's an interesting strategy I didn't think of. So you mean like if I'm the founder of Crumble Cookies, I'm starting a podcast with food industry type
Yep.
folks, right?
Yep.
Yeah,
Yep.
that's a very smart move.
And
Yeah.
go ahead.
No. Sorry, I was done.
And I think the other piece to that is, and you know this, once you start to have an audience, people reach out to you and they want to know you. Like you get a lot of people reaching out to you. I get a lot of people reaching out to me, and I can pick and choose who I want to talk with that I'm going to be able to help, and they're going to be able to help me at a specific time. I had a call yesterday, and I don't take normal calls most of the time, but I had a call with a franchisor that was wanting to get in touch with me, and we had an amazing conversation, and he was able to help me with some things in the way that I'm growing the franchisee mastermind. And I was able to help him out with some things. But because of the platform that you have, that I have, and anybody can have if they want to, you now have influence in an industry. And now you can start to talk, you get introductions of people that you would never get introductions to before.
Yeah, it really is, like sometimes it feels like magic. And right, it can change quickly, right? I only started this literally about a year ago. It was June of 2021 is when I made the Twitter account. So yeah, there's just, there's so much upside, right? And tweeting or wherever you want to build your platform, like I know you have a great Facebook group, Erik. So, whatever your medium of choice is, it's free. All it costs you is your time. And that's the amazing part. That's why I gravitated toward it, because again, like going back to all the side hustle ideas I've ever had, some of them failed because I was just like, I can't fund it. The T-shirt I'm wearing right now, this was actually, which, people won't see this because they're not going to see the video, but that was a side hustle. I was trying to start a T-shirt business like 4 years ago, before I even got in, really deep into the franchise world. So yeah, that's why I like this, because it doesn't cost you a dime, and the opportunities, even just the network value, right? If I got shut down somehow, if Twitter went out of business, just the people I know now, I could build something up rather a lot quicker now, just because of the value of the network. So I highly encourage a lot of people to try to find a way.
And this was done in 1 year, which is mind blowing to me. Like, I'm mad at Caleb that he didn't come to me and say, "Hey, Erik, we should start a Twitter account and have some franchise stuff go out there in an amazing newsletter, and we would have the following that you would have today." We don't have you, but that brings up a point. You can't do everything. You can't be all things to all people. And I think that's one of the mistakes that people make when it comes to personal branding or trying to get an audience or a following. I niched into franchising, and a lot of other people have such broad audiences. And you were bringing up earlier, you niche down and then you can expand out. And then that's what's happening right now with me, from franchising going much more into the investor, passive investing, cash flow investing type influencer. So, but that would have never happened if I hadn't niched down and built an audience in franchising. So any other advice that you would have to franchisees, franchisors, or franchise buyers?
When it comes to audience building, I think we covered a good amount. And I just also want to express to you, like, this isn't me coming up with this. Like, I was on Twitter and I was a student for years, just learning from these people. And eventually it clicked in my head, what the opportunity could be for me. But, like when it comes to niching down, I really took that from the founder of Morning Brew. So if people don't know that, that's a newsletter written by, a couple kids who graduated from college, 2014, 2015 from University of Michigan. It's basically like, the Wall Street Journal, but for millennials. It's a little bit more casual in the tone, but still good news. And, I followed him on Twitter for a while, and he actually had a specific tweet that just said, like, everyone has room for some type of like niche expert. And I'm using experts in quotes. But like, the reality is, even if you're not deeply interested in a topic, you want to follow the person who's like the niche leader of it. And so that was kind of the one it really clicked for me. But yeah, I just want to impress upon people that like that's a media founder who's got like hundreds of thousands of followers on Twitter, and his newsletter, he grew with his co-founder and their company to like 4 million subscribers, and it got acquired by Business Insider for about $80 million, which is wild to me that a newsletter could be that valuable. But so I just want to impress upon that right. It's not me. I didn't like come up with this on my own. This is a proven playbook from people way smarter than me.
I love it. I love it. Well, we're going in a little bit I want to ask you about newsletters for customers? Like, should a franchisee look at doing a newsletter for customers? If so, what kind? And the same thing for franchisors. Should they have a newsletter that's kind of industry specific or in franchising or just for whatever? And I want to talk a little bit more about kind of building that brand. I have a few more questions, but we are going to end the podcast. We're going to record that, probably put that into some YouTube shorts and or into the Franchise Secrets Facebook group. So Wolf, man, it's been great getting to know you. Thanks for coming on.
Yeah, Eric, this was fun. And, always glad to come on and talk franchises, and we'll talk soon.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Franchise Secrets Podcast. Whether you're watching or listening, please make sure to subscribe to my YouTube channel and to whatever channel you're listening on. If you want my help with anything from buying a franchise to franchising your business, please visit franchisesecrets.com.